have managed to triple my income over the last 5 years. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you the 6 limiting beliefs that I removed in order to let in new beliefs that have allowed me to achieve this. My name is Samara, and I help people create the experiences that they truly desire through identity shifting, also known as manifestation. In my mind, they're one and the same. In order to bring in what you want, you first have to become the person or create the container within your energy for the things that you want to bring in. So that's what all my videos are about. If you'd like more information and details on the process that I use to go through identity shifting, please click the link below and get the free guide. So if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes because I really had to sit and think through everything that I did over these last 5 years in order to create the container for much more income. So I'm going to be referring to this list of 6 things. So the first thing that I did, the first belief that I removed, because manifestation is all about removal and creating space for what's already there, is that hard work equals higher pay. So associating effort with income was the first belief that I removed. And the way that I did that was to look at other high earners. So I started listening to podcasts. One in particular stands out in my memory, and it was called Entrepreneur on Fire. I don't even know if it's still out there, but listening to the guy who was interviewing all the entrepreneurs, listening to him tell his own story about how he went from $0 on that podcast to creating 6 figures every month kind of blew my mind wide open as far as what actually contributes to bringing in more income, more resources, more abundance. And so instead of believing that hard work equals more income, I started believing that adding value is what's linked to more income. And there are so many different ways that you can add value, because one thing about value is that that's determined by the receiver of whatever it is that you're delivering. So understanding that you've got to understand what is valued in the space that you're trying to be in, and then provide that value is what's going to get you the income that you desire. And aligning that with what you're passionate about is the key. And it doesn't necessarily have to look one way. And we'll probably get more into that as I go through the other 5 beliefs that I let go of. So the second belief that I had to let go of was that my race, my gender, or my age were holding me back. Now, this one was a little bit more challenging, and it took a lot more experiences to unearth. And actually, this is one that I had been working on before the last 5 years. But the reason it was hard to let go of that belief is because there's so much data out there that shows marginalized people take hits financially in this country, in this capitalistic system. So I could have just looked at the statistics, decided that that was true for me, and then kept it moving. But instead, I said to myself, can I create a reality for myself where my race, my age, and my gender are advantages? And what would that look like? So being a woman in a male dominated industry, there's 2 ways that I could look at that. I could say, well, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm a woman and people are going to assume this about me. Or I could say, as a woman, I bring a unique perspective. And this is a little bit shallow and a little bit cheeky to say, but in male dominated industries, an attractive and feminine woman is the best thing walking to most of those men in those industries. And so I see a lot of women go into male dominated fields trying to act like men. And I said to myself, there's got to be a different way, because I had seen that over and over again, having studied engineering, entered into all these male dominated industries over the course of my career. I've seen so many women try to come in, be really masculine, and outman all the men. And instead I said, what if I leaned into my femininity? What if I really dove into that feminine power? I see femininity as very powerful, powerful like water. And I use that to my advantage. I brought another perspective. I brought refreshing energy into the room. And that's exactly what I did. And it was an extreme advantage to me and has been throughout my career. And I have found that in leaning into my feminine energy, in embracing my differentness when it comes to my age, my race, and my gender, has really been appreciated and received well by people, to the point where, and I'm not saying we're imagining, racism or sexism. We're not. It's real. But what I am saying is that by reframing your approach, you can navigate around some of that and create advantages for yourself. And that's one thing that I did. So the belief that I adopted instead, like I said, is that my race, my gender, my age are unique advantages that I carry with me into the spaces that I work in. So that was belief number 2 that was removed and replaced. Belief number 3 was that the corporate machine is a prison, that anybody who works for somebody else, it's a miserable experience. The corporate, machine means that I don't have any freedom. I've got to answer to somebody. I don't have control over my time. I let that go because years ago I got into a position where I had no choice. I was a young single mom. This was back in my early 20s. So this is a belief that I've chipped away at over the years. But I was in a position where I had to create some flexibility or I was going to lose it. I was going to have to leave on disability. My child was not going to be taken care of. So I had to go to my leadership at work, my colleagues, and say, this is the type of flexibility I need. And it was granted to me. And so that was my first little inkling that I could experience both the security, it's not a real security, but the security of a corporate job, along with the freedom to be able to manage my life effectively. And that's been my experience. I've been working now in my field for about 25 years. I've gradually created more and more freedom, even as I have gained more experience and seniority in my field. So I had to let go of this idea that automatically, because I was working in corporate, I was miserable and I was in some sort of evil machine. The third belief, the belief I replaced that corporate machine is a prison with was all of my paths lead to abundance and freedom. So whether that's through corporate, whether that's through my side hustles, whether that's through whatever the universe decides to deliver to me, my paths always lead to abundance and freedom and more of it as I go along. I remember when I first started doing affirmations, I recorded my affirmations in my own voice. And the one that sticks out to me, or one of the ones that sticks out to me, is I am working less and earning more. I am working less and earning more. I literally listened to that on repeat for years until it became part of my subconscious programming. So the more advanced I get in my career, the more experienced I become, the more efficient I am at what I do. And I actually do less work. I have to put forth less effort to have more impact. So that goes back to that belief that hard work does not equal more pay. It's value add. So yeah, all my paths lead to abundance and freedom, whether that's through corporate or whatever other vehicle that me and the universe, conspire together to create for me. So the fourth belief, and I actually have 7 now that I'm looking and counting, but the fourth belief is that I'm subject to the hardships that everyone else faces. So what I mean by this is, if we're following social media, if we're watching the news and the news is saying, hey, job market is terrible. Hey, everything's too expensive. People can't afford it. And that's the general status of our community, of our country. Sometimes we assume, hey, that's affecting me. We automatically take that to mean that we're going to be impacted. And this is a belief that I held for a long time. If somebody says the job market is bad, that means it's going to be hard for me to find a job. But now I have a fundamental belief that as a creator, as a creative being, I can create a reality within this fourth dimensional experience parallel to another reality, and mine can be completely different. Hopefully you're following me there. So, example, in 2020, I was working for a facilities management company and COVID hit. And of course, lots of people lost their jobs. Facilities management meant that people would need to be physically in places with other people. So a lot of those facilities were shutting down and there was just a lot less work. And so when I heard that, I started panicking. And that happened maybe a few months after me and my kids moved in with my dad, which I can do a whole nother video on how beneficial that was. But when I heard that there were going to be layoffs, I went to my dad, and he's the one that actually shifted my belief here. Rest in peace, Dad. But he said, don't worry about that. I got you. And so all the panic and fear that I was feeling in that moment just kind of dissipated. And I was just okay. And I was like, well, I guess no matter what happens, I'm safe. You know, my dad's able to take care of the bills. We'll just have to do what we have to do. But that panic, like that feeling like me losing my job meant that I was going to lose everything, just went away. And within a few months, my boss at that time, who really valued my contributions, I was adding value, offered me a role in the COVID response team, which had nothing to do with my expertise or experience. He just wanted to keep me on board. Not only did he offer me that role that allowed me to keep working through COVID and through the company's downturn, he bumped my salary up significantly. So that was actually my first huge salary bump. So that got me well into the six figures even back then. Um, so yeah, I let go of the idea that I had to experience all those hardships. And actually, this may sound like it's coming from a privileged place, but it's not. I think it comes from me deciding what my reality is going to look like. But I experienced more abundance, more freedom, more like soul, what do you call it, elevation during that time than any other time in my life. Like COVID was the absolute best time for me, even though it was really difficult for us as a collective to go through, if that makes sense. And since then, I've realized that even though there can be all this stuff going on, all even now, like things are crazy right now, that doesn't have to be my experience. I am the author of my experience, and me being able to regulate my nervous system enough to embrace the belief that I am taken care of, that all of my paths lead to abundance. That's a belief I talked about earlier. Is super powerful. And it doesn't matter what's happening. It doesn't matter who's doing what, who's in what position, what people are saying about the way things are going. I am the author of my experience and my reality. So the new belief that I let in was that I can exist in a parallel reality alongside other realities. So I can watch things unfolding a certain way, but that doesn't mean that that has to define my experience. The fifth belief that I let go of is that I need to fix the situation I'm in. What do I mean by that? I have another story regarding that. So, I went into engineering at the advice of a mentor because I wanted to have a lucrative career. So I'm a math nerd, I'm a science nerd, and I was told engineering is a perfect fit for that. But I never truly enjoyed traditional engineering. So anyway, fast forward into my career, I end up in the renewable space. And this is when I started to kind of branch out from engineering. But I ended up working for this horrible boss. I had a total of 3 bosses at that job. And that last boss was a nightmare. You know, I was talking earlier about how some women come into the industry, male dominated industries, and try to be more manly than the men. She was one of those people. And she made my life a living hell. For whatever reason, she felt like she needed to diminish me in order to seem better at her job, I guess. So anyway, that was a very difficult time for me. I was targeted, all kinds of stuff was going on. HR had to get involved, and I'm the most conflict avoidant, peacekeeping. I'm a Libra rising. If you know anything about that, you know what that means. And so it's very challenging. And at first, I was like, oh my God, I've got to deal with this unwanted situation. This is not the type of energy I like to be in. What am I going to do? And I was very focused on how to properly handle that situation. And then I decided, this is really my first huge identity shifting instance that I was fully conscious of. So I decided that instead of worrying about that situation, I was just going to become the person that had my dream job. Like, not only was I going to elevate out of this negative situation with this boss, but I was actually going to change my entire career and end up in my dream job as a result of just deciding to become that person, even at that current job. So every day I would get up and I would only focus on what my ideal role would be like. And I did all kinds of manifestation techniques back when I used to do manifestation techniques, and really defined what I wanted that to look like, down to the detail, like down to how I wanted to feel when I showed up at the building every day, what I wanted the environment to be like, my coworkers. And so I would show up to that job where I was experiencing basically narcissistic abuse and just act as though I was in the new role with the new colleagues. And so I showed up to work in a great mood every day, no matter what. And that situation actually escalated to the point where this person went to HR about my performance, which was stellar. Like, I had never had any complaints about my performance. I had been there for about 7.5 years, and threatened to take away my flexible schedule, which I mentioned before. Like, I needed that in order to be able to manage my home life, but I was still a high performer. And so she made up all of these things about my performance and said that if it didn't improve, that they were going to take away my flexible schedule. In that moment, I was still flying high. Like, my vibration was high, even though all of this tomfoolery was happening. And I had interviewed for other jobs and those things had fallen through, but I held that high vibration. And within a week of that sit down conversation about my performance and taking away my flexible schedule, I got an offer. Now, what's funny about this is I had decided that I was passionate about change management. I had been certified in change management by my first boss at that company. And I was like, this is the key right here, because I'm very big on process and all of that. Anyway, I was passionate about it and I decided that I wanted to do it full time. But the only way I had ever seen it done was as a consultant. So I was interviewing with all these consultancies, which I knew didn't really fit my lifestyle. Like, there's nothing flexible about life as a consultant. You got to be ready to pack that bag and hop on a plane at a moment's notice. But I was like, I got to go in this direction. This is where my passion is taking me. I'll figure it out. So everything was kind of falling through with the consultancies. Then I got a call from a recruiter saying, hey, we've got this full-time, work from down the street from my house job for a change manager. Are you interested? I got the position right away. And when I got there, I laughed out loud when I saw my desk at the office. The environment was exactly what I had described. My colleagues at that time were exactly the kind of people that I said I wanted to work with. And it was truly incredible. Like, that's when I was convinced that something that I used to call overlaying, but really it's just identity shifting and holding the frequency, worked. Like, it was real. I was able to get out of a horrible situation without trying to fix it. I didn't have to fix that situation. I had to fix who I was being so that my reality didn't have any choice but to reflect that. So the belief I let go of again was believing I need to fix the situation that I'm in, and changing that to I can learn from the situation and grow from the situation. Like I said, I made a ton of observations about how that dynamic plays out in the workplace. And if you want help with that, comment below and I can, give you more detail about what I did. But I changed that belief to I can learn from the situation I'm in, but at the same time, become the person that is in the new situation. At the same time, I don't have to focus my energy and attention on an unwanted experience. So that's that. I'll leave that there. The sixth belief that I let go of was that I need to impress my boss and my colleagues. To be honest, I've always kind of marched to the beat of my own drum. I've never been one concerned with impressing others. I think it's my neurodivergence that keeps me from caring what people think about me. But I did think that in a work environment that my goal should be to please my boss or please my colleagues, impress them, let them know that I was good at what I was doing. But the reality is that's almost impossible to do sometimes. If you have a boss that is really invested in you as an employee and getting the best out of you, then it's effortless to impress them as long as you're putting forth effort. But if you have a boss or colleagues that are in a competitive environment, or they just have this idea that, you're not what they want, essentially, there's nothing you can do about that either. So the belief that I replaced that with was, I'm impressive as long as I move towards my passions, and I'm impressive to the right people. So if somebody is devoted to misunderstanding me or labeling me as not a top performer, then that's on them. But as long as I'm moving toward my passions, then I'm going to be impressive, period. I'm going to be able to easily develop my skills and easily find new roles and positions and opportunities. So the way that that looked in real life was that I started gravitating only towards projects that I wanted to be on. So I started being a lot more vocal when opportunities to work on things were presented to me. I would say, yeah, no, I don't really like that. Even if it was part of my job description, I was bold enough to say, look, that is not a strength of mine, but also come with ideas about how to get that taken care of in a creative way or by someone else. So I started really molding my own job description. by highlighting the things that I was passionate about and good at and showing that I could add real value, but also being honest about what I didn't really enjoy or want to be a part of. So I started saying no to more things, and I started letting my compass be, what excites me versus how can I impress these people. And that became especially important when I took on the role that I have now. I became a director. I'm a director level now, executive level. And because it was new to me, I've been a specialist pretty much my entire career, like digging deep in adding value in that way. Um, Having exposure to the C suite kind of automatically puts you in this position to have to try to impress, because most of what I do is reporting, getting feedback, and then managing strategy and resources, right? So obviously, if I go in front of the C suite, I want to tell a story that makes them want to invest in me and my team in certain ways, provide certain resources, give certain visibility, all of that. So it has been a challenge to maintain the belief that as long as I'm focused in on my passions, as long as I'm clear on who I am and what I bring, the value that I bring, then that is where my success comes from. I've had to do a lot of work around that. I've had to show up in ways that people aren't used to. I've had to challenge certain beliefs and status quos. I've had to consider what I want my path to look like going forward in different ways. But my point is, I'm staying true to myself in that. I am choosing my next move based on passion, based on excitement, based on the value that I know that I bring, instead of trying to force myself to mold myself into what I think people want. Um, and then lastly, number 7, the bonus one, is I had the belief that if I lose this job, I'll lose everything. And I talked a little bit about this earlier. But the new belief that I had to let in, and this is something that influences everything I do, is that the all is my source and I have access to everything at all times. So there's nothing that I can lose and just be out of luck. If something is moving out of my reality, it's making space for something else to come in. And the only thing that has allowed me to adopt this belief is experience. I'm in my 40s now, deep in my 40s, and over again, it's been proven to me that everything always works out for me. That whenever I've faced a challenge or a loss, it has created the building blocks, the learning experiences, or it created the space to bring in the new and improved. So I don't fear losing anything ever, for that reason. And so letting go of all of those limiting beliefs has essentially given me the freedom to bring in as much income as I can conceive of. Basically, as much income as I have created space for. And I can continue on that trajectory now that I've removed everything that's holding me back, removed everything that's creating a ceiling for me financially. Now there's no ceiling. Now I have ambitions that really don't even revolve around money anymore. They're more about what I can do with my abundance. Like, how can I serve? What would happen if I had unlimited abundance as a person who has developed the ability to self-regulate, connect with source, and just be kind without any ulterior motive? Like, how much could I do? And so that's the exercise that I've been doing recently, is thinking about how I would actually use that much money. Sometimes we're limited because we can only receive the amount of money that we know how to handle, like spend or save or invest. And if we're a person that was raised, by people living paycheck to paycheck, then we only understand so much about how money works because we never saw a full savings account. We might not have learned about CDs and investments, index funds. We may not know much about entrepreneurship and how to invest in different businesses. So the thing that I've been doing now that I've kind of opened up my container for more money, is expanding it even further and saying, if I was bringing in 7 figures a month, what would I do with it? And literally writing it down. Right. And I've come to that point where now I I've got to start bringing in professionals to help me with it. Like, now my container is getting so big, it's big enough that I don't want to. I won't say I can't. I don't want to handle all of my money myself. I want to bring in an accountant, a CPA. I want a tax professional that's really skilled to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. I want an estate attorney to understand how to set things up for future generations. Those are not things that you think about when your ceiling is at a certain level with regard to finances. Those are only things that you would need to understand if you had a container big enough for that amount of money. So if you're a person looking to expand your container, start to think about an amount of money, and what you do with it. And I remember when I first started this exercise, I thought that I just had a number in mind per month that I wanted to earn. But then when I started to think about how I would spend it, I just ran out of things to spend it on. Like, during that exercise, my container wasn't big enough. My imagination wasn't reaching far enough. And it took me a while to come back to that and say, okay, now I know what I would spend it on. Okay, now, I know what to do with it. So maybe that's the next step. If you're watching this video and you have big dreams about big money, ask yourself what you would do with it. What would life really look like day to day? What kind of support would you need? Where would the money be? How would you spend it every month? And just that exercise alone can really expand your container. But yeah, go back through those 7 beliefs that I released. I think everything that we manifest comes not from trying to imagine something new. It comes first from releasing something, that a belief that we previously held, to allow something new in its place. Because those beliefs that we hold kind of make up our identity. And if we try to kind of stack a new identity on top of an old one, it creates this push and pull, and in some cases, the psychosis. Like, we can get so angry that we're unable to pull in that new reality, not realizing that it's because something else is in the way. Like, there's no space for it. You can't hold 2 identities at the same time. You can't hold 2 contradicting identities at the same time. You can't hold an identity that says, women, Black people, people this age don't make this much money. That's just not the way it works. Or jobs are hard to come by. And also hold on to an identity that says, the world is my oyster. The universe always provides for me. You kind of have to let go of one in order to hold on to the other one. So, hope this helps. Comment below if you have experience with increasing income by changing your belief system. And click like, share, subscribe.